Hey everybody, Jack here. Nintendo just released their interview with Hidetaka Miyazaki on the upcoming game Duskbloods, which is going to be a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, as well as a PvPvE title. Goodness gracious, that's a mouthful. I thought we could just read through the interview and see if we find anything interesting to talk about. I haven't read the interview yet. However, I have some other things that I'd like to talk about regarding Hidetaka Miyazaki and his love for vampires. So far, it looks like Duskblood is like the unofficial spiritual successor for Bloodborne. Bloodborne, obviously, stuck on the PlayStation 4 forever, and now Duskbloods might be stuck on the Switch 2 forever. So Miyazaki's Eldritch Horror is creating games and locking them to one console forever. First, he comes out of the gate introducing himself as working at From Software and being the director of Duskbloods. He's the president of From Software, so very humble for him to just say, I work at From Software. He goes into how they had the opportunity to meet with Nintendo to discuss ideas, and they presented a rough outline for the Duskbloods, which was originally going to be on the Nintendo Switch, but with the new hardware focus on online features, it allowed them to shape Duskbloods to be a Switch 2 title. He says in terms of structure, he considers it a PvPvE title. At its core, it's online multiplayer-focused game with both player versus player and player versus enemy gameplay. The thing that comes to mind to me is games like Escape from Tarkov, which I think Hidetaka Miyazaki has mentioned as games that he likes. In a 2023 interview with IGN, Hidetaka Miyazaki says that he is looking for games like Escape from Tarkov for inspiration. If you've never played Escape from Tarkov, I used to play it a lot. I don't know if I would recommend it. It's very fun and very frustrating, where in that game you have a persistent character who goes into different levels with other players online, maybe at max 16 other players, and you're trying to loot materials and things like that, and then extract it out of the zone to have it for the next match. All the while, there are things like NPCs that you can fight, boss characters that you can fight, and then also the other players. So while you're trying to do quests and collect loot and get out of there with all of your gear without dying, you have to worry about monsters and other people interrupting that for you. I think the other game that's similar to that is Hunt: The Last Showdown. I haven't played it, but similar concept. So I think this is going to be interesting. This is very different from what we're seeing with Night Rain, which is Night Rain is just PvE, multiplayer-focused PvE. So the introduction of PvP into the game design, I think is going to work pretty well. We already have the concept of invasions through Dark Souls and Elden Ring and all that. So a game that's focused on fighting unique, challenging monsters while also having players jump in to interrupt that gameplay, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be interesting, though, having to play with friends on the Nintendo Switch. I'm not confident with Nintendo's ability to get multiplayer working well, but since Hidetaka Miyazaki doesn't really like people talking to each other while they play his games anyway, maybe it's going to work out. Did you always have some desire to make a PvPvE type game? Yes, I've always found the PvPvE, what a really annoying thing to say, structure very interesting. It allows for a broad range of game design ideas, while also letting us leverage our experience of designing challenging enemy encounters. As a side note, please allow me to address one thing. As previously mentioned, this is an online multiplayer title at its core, but this doesn't mean that we as a company have decided to shift to a more multiplayer-focused direction with titles going forward. He makes mention that Elden Ring is going to come to the Switch 2, and that they're still going to be making single-player focused games. I think he has to come out of the gate saying that, because with Night Rain and this, it just seems like, is From Software done with single-player games? No, that's not the case. Please tell us about the game's characters and settings. The game's protagonists or characters are controlled by the player, or characters controlled by the player are known as the Bloodsworn. The Bloodsworn are a group whose members have achieved superhuman abilities through the power of special blood. As a general concept, they're similar to vampires, but they're not portrayed as the horrifying monsters you might associate with traditional vampirism. We tried to extract the sort of romantic aspects we found interesting from the concepts such as vampires and blood and reinterpret them as the Bloodsworn. Before we talk about the obvious things about blood related to Bloodborne, I want to talk about one of Hidetaka Miyazaki's favorite books, Fever Dream. written by George R. R. Martin, published in 1982. In an interview with Newsweek titled Elden Ring Director Recommends a George R. R. Martin Novel to Employees, and it's not Game of Thrones, Miyazaki described himself as a big fan of Martin's work. He has the deep cuts to back it up. I loved A Song of Ice and Fire as well as the Tough Voyaging series. However, if I had to pick a favorite, I would probably say Fever Dream. I personally see Fever Dream as a masterpiece among vampire fantasy and had even previously recommended it to all new employees. So that's really high praise and shows how much love for George R. R. Martin that Miyazaki has, especially his vampire works. The interesting thing, I would really recommend reading Fever Dream. It's not that long of a book, 450 pages. Really excellent fantasy novel, or really excellent vampire novel. Takes place 1800s on the Mississippi River. The main character, the main vampire character, a lot of similarities to Mikola as a character. He, he has that bewitching power. He's very youthful. People love him. He's great. Love that character. And the villain is absolutely horrifying. He is this vampire who has existed, I think, longer than all of humanity. And he has lines like, days and years are alike to one who lives the life eternal. And when I was reading Fever Dream for the first time, I hadn't read it until I played Elden Ring. It made me think of like, oh, here's some of the influence towards like Marika and the Eternals and things like that, and the Newman, that this idea of existing before humanity and seeing time in a different way because you lived for so long. It also has a lot of the sci-fi aspects to George R. R. Martin's work that really isn't seen in more of his later stuff, because the vampires aren't just vampires because they're magic. Like, there's an entire chapter where he has to explain that the vampires are superhuman because of the nitrogen levels in their blood and things like that. It's all very silly. Like, George R. R. Martin has to do things like that. But the other thing is that this villain, he has a lot of what I think influenced Bloodborne. In the end of Bloodborne, when you fight the ultimate, like, god, the moon presence, it doesn't talk, it doesn't say anything. It's very gangly, it's very beast-like, it crawls on all fours, and it just wants to, like, eat blood and stuff. Like, it's just a monster. And the villain in Fever Dream is like that too. He comes across as this sophisticated presence, but in reality, he just sits in the dark and doesn't do anything and just waits for his next feeding. Like, he is just a beast at heart. And Fever Dream, really great book. If you're interested in learning about some of Hidetaka Miyazaki's inspiration, definitely read Fever Dream. You're going to see a lot of Bloodborne in it. You'll see a lot of Elden Ring in it. It's awesome. Continuing with the interview. Sorry for that tangent. In the Duskbloods, the Bloodsworn are competing for something known as First Blood. That makes me think of like Quake or something. As human society reaches an end, First Blood flows in an event known as the Twilight of Humanity. Okay, so humanity is coming to an end, and First Blood flows. The Bloodsworn are summoned to the Twilight Humanity across a variety of different times and places in a bid to obtain First Blood. So across a variety of different times and places makes me think of Dark Souls 3, when the first flame starts, and like when the first flame starts fading, the lands of Lothric get all of the Lords of Cinder's lands to come together. And it's also like kind of like at different times too. Dark Souls 3 has a ton of time travel in it. So is this what's happening? This Duskblood lands, or the humanity, like the Age of Fire is coming to a close in the Duskbloods, and the transitory lands of Yharnam or whatever are coming together, and they have to get to the First Blood instead of the First Flame. I don't know. It seems seems like a copy and paste again. Especially Twilight of Humanity. He using very specific words, as humanity is the dark soul. So if Duskbloods is secretly part of some shared universe, maybe we're getting some information there. Due to this, there's no fixed era or location that Duskbloods takes place in. There are more traditional Gothic or Victorian-style maps, as well as those depicting the closing years of the early modern period, like the one glimpsed in the trailer with the train running through. That was cool. I was watching I watched, if you guys ever watched Tulak and Mango, he was talking about, oh, I want Bloodborne 2 to take place on a train, and it looks like he predicted it correctly. Good for him. Can you let us know the meaning behind the title Duskbloods? Duskbloods directly refers to the Bloodsworn themselves, so that's the characters that you play as. As mentioned earlier, the Bloodsworn are summoned to the twilight of humanity in a battle for first blood. Really reminds me of the Ashen Ones and the Lords of Cinder being summoned when the Age of Fire comes to a close. It sounds like blood plays a pretty big role in this game. Yes, in context of this game, blood is used more conceptually, as opposed to a literal meanings in like physical depictions or injury. Blood symbolizes one of the game's key themes, the history it holds, the power it passes on, the fates it weaves, and the marker of those who have surpassed the limitations of their own humanity. Holy moly! What a sentence, Miyazaki! Alright, geez, we're really gonna have to break that one down. Blood symbolizes one of the game's themes, the history it holds. So the history that it holds, it makes me think of how in Bloodborne there are the blood echoes, which are like the echoes of the ancients. It functions similarly to souls in Demon Souls and in Dark Souls. From Demon Souls, we know that the power of soul arts allows for people's imagination to literally manifest their history or their myths, like the Storm King and the Dragon God and the ancient hero, I think his name is. Those only exist because the power of souls allow them to manifest, even if they weren't real to begin with. It also makes me think of the power it passes on. Both Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R. R. Martin, even though George R. R. Martin isn't involved in this project, obviously, mostly just Elden Ring, but they both have this they both do recursive storytelling where stories told within stories hold power themselves. And we kind of see that with Elden Ring 2, with when you defeat a boss, you get their remembrance, you get their memory. And their memory, the memory of that character, the things that they've done, what you believe about them, that can be manifested into literal weapons and power. Like, you defeat Radon, you get his remembrance, and then from his memory, you can create a sword. It seems like the blood symbolism is very similar to the soul symbolism in his other games, the blood echo symbolism, and the rune symbolism. Runes are also literally words, like letters and stuff, so that makes sense to me. The fate it weaves. Blood symbolizes the fate it weaves. The fate that it weaves. That makes me think of your destiny might be tied to who you're born or what your lineage is, or perhaps it's part of that tying with the history it holds. Like if your future is determined by your past in some way. It doesn't mean that it's set in stone, but it is determined in some way. Similar concept within Elden Ring. Prophecy plays a very large role in Elden Ring's story, with things such as, the prophet class seeing the burning of the Ur Tree, or the Hornsent prophesizing Miquella and Radon through their dancing lion, as well as prophesizing Godwyn's death and rebirth as the Prince of Death, with the dancing lion having ice lightning, and with the dancing lion having ice storms, golden lightning, and then the second one summoning basilisks. So that kind of makes that's a very interesting one to me too, the fates that it weaves. Yeah, I mean, because the runes in Elden Ring, sorry, we're going all over the place, but this is a really crazy interview. In Elden Ring, the Elden Ring is the name of the game, Elden Ring, and it's made of runes, and runes are words. They're letters. You rearrange them, and you rearrange the order of the story. If you could read the runes, you could know what the future of the story would be. And I'm kind of seeing a similar concept when he says that blood symbolizes that the fate that it weaves, especially since runes operate very similar to souls, and they operate very similar to blood echoes. And the markers of those who surpass the limitations of their own humanity. That makes it sound like the Duskbloods and the Bloodsworn, who are coming at the twilight of humanity, they were once human. I guess since they're similar to vampires, but they're not the horrific monsters. In Fever Dream, they are not, the vampires and the humans are separate species. They can't interbreed, but maybe this is different for the Bloodsworn. Maybe that's the thing about First Blood. What happens when you get the first blood? If humanity is coming to a close, do you get to, in all Miyazaki's games, we have these recursive, we have different ages, Dark Souls, Age of the Ancients, Age of Fire, Elden Ring, the Age of the Erd Tree, the Age of the Elden Ring, time before the Elden Ring, then all the ages that you get to pick. Maybe these people get to exist further into the, maybe in the next cycle. Humanity comes to a close and you get to live in the next one. So maybe that's what's happening there. I don't know. Really interesting stuff. All right, let's read part 2 on their superhuman abilities and opportunistic behavior. What are some of the characteristics of the Bloodsworn? There are several reasons we put the player's focus on the Bloodsworn, with one of those being character actions. The Bloodsworn possess superhuman abilities thanks to special blood, so their actions are more dramatic than anything seen in our previous titles. Yeah, the special blood, maybe that is the first blood? Maybe you get first blood and that is what makes you more powerful? I wonder if there's going to be, since it's PvPvE, if it's going to be the case where you get first blood and then your character is stronger for the next match that you play. Even basic character actions in the game, such as sprinting, super jump, and double jump, are designed to be dynamic and stress-free and are complemented by each character's unique weapons and abilities, allowing for a range of creativity. Yeah, I mean, there was a dude with a jetpack, so... also, and while this isn't directly related to Bloodstorm themselves, the setting allows for the depiction of firearms and such, and every character is equipped with some means of attacking from a distance. I feel this is one of the game's unique aspects when compared with our previous titles. Just don't say Bloodborne. Just don't say it. Just allude to it. While looking at the article, man, that frog has a lot of teeth. Holy crap. These monsters are so creepy. Wow. Earlier, you referred to protagonists or characters as plural. Does that mean the player will be able to choose from multiple different characters? Yes, there are over a dozen characters for the player to choose from, each with their own identity and appearance, very similar to Night Rain. I think there are a lot of unique elements to the character design and the weapons they use, so hopefully players can find one or two favorites among them. That's interesting. I wonder if we're going to have different branching, like upgrade paths. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I should have just kept reading. Also, each character can be customized to a certain extent, allowing players the fun of building a character that feels like their own. Yeah, okay. So I guess we're going to see, if there is, I guess I should keep reading, but if there is, PvPvE, I hope that it's, you're trying to beat these monsters and beat these bosses and beat other players because you want their items or upgrades for future levels. Like, you're getting that in Night Rain with the upgrading, and that has to be similar in here, right? I wonder if it's going to be cosmetic changes too. The game has a so-called hub area where players can choose their character, customize them, and enter online multiplayer. Online multiplayer supports up to 8 players. Upon concluding an online match, players then return to the hub, at which point they receive some sort of reward whether they win or lose. Using these rewards, players can further customize their character, and so the cycle continues. Oh, okay. Yeah, we know the cycle continues. What's interesting is that you get it for win or lose. Very different than Tarkov. Tarkov is you have to survive if you want to get something. So for Dark Souls and Elden Ring and stuff being called the hardest games of all time or whatever, not the case. Very, very fair and forgiving in this. Online matches are generally last player standing. However, there are certain cases where victory conditions differ. For example, players may be tasked with teaming up to take down a powerful boss enemy or find themselves in other special circumstances. Oh, sweet. I can't think of many examples with that rule set. Sounds very interesting. I'm happy to hear you say that. Regardless of whether it's PvP or PvE, the idea is to provide players with an experience that allows them to learn and hone their skills as they play. We've therefore designed the PvE boss encounters to present a tough challenge and a sense of accomplishment upon defeating them. Miyazaki and his sense of accomplishments. So players can also enjoy improving their own skills over time as they battle? Yes, although there are a variety of elements in place that keep the game from becoming too stoic. For example, how players conduct themselves during the match is just as important as direct combat. The Duskbloods implement victory points, which are responsible for ultimately deciding the outcome of the match. To obtain victory points, direct combat is of course important, but it's not the only way. Some players may prefer to earn points by avoiding direct combat and instead engaging in more opportunistic behavior. How you earn your points is entirely up to you. Additionally, each character can summon an entity to assist in combat, giving players a high degree of freedom when it comes to how they fight and win. So it looks like the Spirit Ash system is getting a return in Duskbloods from Elden Ring. And we're also the opportunistic behavior. So I'm guessing you're waiting for kind of like a MOBA style. You swoop in on someone fighting a boss monster, or maybe last hit them or something, and then kill the other player while they're low on like healing or something. That could be pretty cool. Another important aspect is match variables, such as the event system. This system has the potential to alter the course of the match, such as special enemy spawns and additional objectives with accompanying bonus rewards. In the trailer, you may have noticed a giant stone face looming in the sky. This is one example of the event that occurs in the match. In this case, the appearance of the stone face affects the environment and changes match rewards, which can have an immediate impact on player motivations and objects. Yeah, it's a Majora's Mask. You only got 48 hours or 72 hours to finish the level, so you gotta wait before it crashes into the ground. These events don't happen all the time, and I hope discovering them gives some players some incentive to keep coming back. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I guess that's the fun of try again, because you might get something. You want to keep playing for a specific event. I guess it's going to be a case where people game out what the events are and what the rewards are, and you might have a meta game or min-maxers who are looking for a specific reward. The last article, this one has an interesting name. Part 3, Playing Roles and Altering Fates. I'm curious to what that means. What other ways might players enjoy the game outside of combat? One thing I love doing in any game I direct is leaving fragments of lore and world building details. Of course you do. Allowing the player the fun of using their imagination to make connections. The Duskbloods is no exception to this. However, we've gone about it a little different from previous titles. The fragments this time are found in the previously mentioned character customization items. They're blood, history, and fate. Customizing a character will reveal a piece of information regarding the world and its unfolding story. With the introduction of Night Rain and almost solidifying that Dark Souls and Elden Ring are in a similar continuity, I think moving with Duskbloods, I hope that the player base also kind of looks at the game and this lore in that lens too, especially when looked at the how he sees the themes of blood, how they cross between all of the different games that he's done. You customize their blood history and their fate. Yeah, your fate is what you make. Analyzing and altering a character's blood history and fate allows the player to customize all sorts of things, from their abilities, appearance, inner characteristics, to the role they play in the world and relationships with other characters. That's kind of like when you level up in Dark Souls, you're using souls to, are you stronger, are you smarter, do you have more faith, do you have more magic? Same thing with Elden Ring, Bloodborne, with the runes and the blood echoes. It's the same thing. I think what he's saying here is you're essentially like leveling them up in a way. Maybe not in the typical sense where you have like the menu and you do your regular leveling up, but in the sense that these ephemeral ideas like your soul or the runes, the words of what makes you, these are things that you can change on a whim and push into your own direction. And that's what I think he means by blood history and fate. Focusing these elements on concept of blood or blood history and fate allows for deeper exploration of customization and is another reason we placed the Bloodsworn as the protagonist. Yeah, I think it's like, that it's this magical or unexplainable aspect of these characters that allows for them to be so superhuman that is different than you or I. You or I can't go into our blood and make ourselves stronger. Do you mind sharing any points you personally find interesting? One area I haven't talked about yet is roles. In online play, roles give players special responsibilities and objectives that often lead to unique interactions and relationships between players based on their corresponding roles. For example, if a player possesses the Destined Rivals role, another player is designated as their rival. This reminds me of Team Fortress 2. If someone killed you too many times, you became rivals. And they're tasked with finding and defeating that player. Doing so counts as achieving a personal goal, separate from overall victory conditions. I wonder if it's going to be a case if both players are set to rivals, or if it's going to be like one player has to hunt another player. So while you might be given the role of like competing PvE stuff, there's someone else in the map who is specifically hunting you. That would be really cool. Another example is Destined Companion, where one player is required to seek out another designated as their companion, which results in a special reward if they form a bond with one another. Wow, that's really cool. Roles can be assigned to any character via blood customization, allowing players to enjoy role-playing in a literal sense and hopefully adding to the drama of these engagements. Oh, so you're customizing who that you're going to help somebody or you're going to hunt somebody. That's actually that. Yeah, I guess that makes sense for the role playing. I like that idea. That's really fun. There's a screenshot of a rat bird, and it has runes on it. Oh, those for the trailer. This reminds me, I was curious about the winged rat creature. Can you provide some details of what the role this character serves? That character... Oh, sorry. That character shares a similar role with the fire keepers from their Dark Souls series. They remain in the hub area, providing the player with advice and guidance. You know, this is so funny. I don't, you know, there's a lot, like Velka in the Dark Souls series is tied to like ravens and stuff, and I suspect that she's also like tied to the fire keepers. I don't know. The fact that the firekeeper is a rat bird, I don't know. That just seems like a connection to me. I don't know. This game is so crazy. I suppose you could say we tried doing something a little Nintendo-esque in the spirit of the partnership. What do you mean by that? We tried something cute for a change. Although I will say this character is actually an elderly gentleman. Oh, all right. The interviewer is laughing too. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish? In addition to creating PvPvE titles, tried our hand at introducing a lot of new and interesting ideas to Duskblood. From superhuman player actions, freeform combat approach, and gameplay that's dynamic and dramatic, to the romanticized aesthetic of the Bloodsworn, deep character customization, and fragmentary storytelling. I think there's a lot to appreciate and enjoy in this title, and I sincerely hope players look forward to it. Wow, Miyazaki, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for doing this interview and dropping all this stuff on us. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hope you enjoyed my little commentary and just reading through this for you. You know, you don't have to read it. You can just listen to me say it. I'd also like to just say quickly, thank you to members. If you become a member of the channel, you get early access to my long-form Let's Play lore through of Elden Ring. And I'd also ask if anyone is interested into donating to my marathon fund. I will be running in the Chicago 2025 marathon for the Mercy Home for Boys and Girls, which is a nonprofit organization that is whose goal is to help children in crisis either escape abuse and heal from their trauma. Personally, as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, this is very personal and very meaningful to me. So if you would be willing to donate to that cause and help me reach my goal of $2,100, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you'd like to hear more about my personal story as a survivor, you could find that in the description under my video, How Elden Ring Saved My Life. All right, that's it, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you guys in the future.